at most vulnerable risk from such calamity, and how they are still hoping that we will all be able to save them, give them predictability, give them their livelihoods back, give them their futures back. They have a right, Excellencies. They have a right to live, to breathe, to till the soil, to farm their countries, to work in the cities that are not burning them up. These are fundamental rights. And this is, I'm grateful to the UN system to be building and pivoting the COP, as well as all its other work, on a moral pivot, the pivot of collective responsibility. The COP27 system, ladies and gentlemen, is built on common but differentiated responsibilities. It is not mere words to us. We come here in the hope that some path forward from intention to action, from ambition to process and delivery on the ground will be precipitated here. Because we are not all helpless. When I look at my country, we still have to resettle people. We still have to feed them, clothe them, give them whatever we can. And most of our money goes, it is still going, to preparing half that 33 million for a winter that is going to be dangerous, it is going to be fragile for them, and for many it will be a predatory winter because they will be living under tarpaulins. And I am not ashamed to say that we have worked flat out many nights, including Pakistanis, including the international community, many were there. So while I'm speaking to you about the dystopia that has come to our doorsteps, the dystopia is the hell that the Secretary General was speaking about, we might stop to think for a minute about what our collective responsibilities are. I think that's what this is about. Thinking and reflecting on a Sunday in a beautiful capital or a winter capital or winter resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the Egyptian government has been so kind to provide us all the facilities for our late night negotiations, for our long, multiple deliberations, for voices both from the mainstream, from the edge, from the margins, and from the center and the heart of decision-making at the highest levels to civil society and young people who are seeking urgent change. We too seek urgent change, Excellencies, not as irresponsible players. My Prime Minister was here, my Foreign Minister was here. We were here pitching for a greater share of this collective responsibility, because just from this one flood that I have shown you, that went on relentlessly falling from the sky, a monsoon of biblical proportions which nobody has ever seen before. We are used to floods that come from the north. This was all of them. And we have the largest amount of glaciers in the world outside the polar region, which are melting now at a very fast rate, 3 times the normal. And part of what you saw was the flooding from those glaciers when the lakes burst. They're called glacial lake outburst floods. They're not technicalities for us. There are urgent and absolutely critical realities. We were able to save lives in the glacial lake outburst floods because with the United Nations agencies, we have a long program of resilient communities and early warning systems in the north. This is something we've worked out and we were able to save lives. But at no point were we able to save infrastructure, power plants, hydromet stations, even the early warning stations that were parked there were wiped out. So while we keep reading in the north, higher and higher bridges, because we are told the climate will eventually settle down, it is not settling down. And in the south, where 80% of the devastation took place, which is where I'm from, the topography, the geography of the countryside is forever changed. It will not go back to the same by this climate catastrophe. There are now huge lakes in the middle of Pakistan south, which used to be an arid area. It used to be facing drought all the time, and it will go back to drought while those lakes are sitting there, infecting people with waterborne diseases, which is the next health emergency. And the WHO, I was reading this morning, has said that the climate impact is the biggest health emergency now facing the populations of the world. It is not the pandemic. So we are affected $30 billion loss and damage, ladies and gentlemen, just from this flood. So if you want to hear from the front lines, this is the voice of the lost, this is the voice of the damaged, and the World Bank tells us, beyond this 30 billion and the exogenous shock to our economy, to our people, to our women, children, and vulnerable, those on the margins, it will take us until 2030, which is for us a dangerous and decisive decade, not 2050. The race towards 3 degrees is not in 2050. It will happen sooner if we don't act. And they tell us the bill, just for us to keep our head above water in Pakistan until 2030 is $348 billion from the climate shocks we are facing every year. So with those words, I leave you with thoughts that might encourage real transitions, prod us towards making more responsible decisions, because when one ecosystem goes down or starts dying, that is the law of nature. It starts taking down the next one and the next one in the next one. So what went on in Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen, will not stay in Pakistan. Thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Rehman, for your very
मौसमियाती तब्दीली शहरी रहमान मिस्र में इंटर पार्लियामेंट्री यूनियन इजलास से खिताब कर रही थी। उन्होंने कहा कि सैलाब से आने वाली तबाही पहले कभी नहीं देखी गई। सैलाब से ये जो तबाहियां आई हैं, इससे पहले तारीख में कभी इस तरह की तबाही नहीं आई। उन्होंने कहा कि मौसमियाती तब्दीली से निपटने के लिए हम सबको मिलकर काम करना होगा। आलमी हिद्दत में निहायत इजाफा हो रहा है। सैलाबी पानी से मुतासरा आबादी में वबाई अमराज भी फैल रहे हैं। आने वाली दुनिया को जो मौसमियाती तब्दीलियों का शिकार होंगी, उसके लिए हमें मिलकर इस सब का मुकाबला करना पड़ेगा। मिस्र में इंटर पार्लियामेंट्री यूनियन इजलास मुनक्किद हो रहा था, जिसमें वफाकी वजीर बराए मौसमियाती तब्दीली शहरी रहमान मौजूद थीं और खिताब कर रही थीं।